No war has ever been paused, no ceasefire declared quite like this. Just after 3:30 this afternoon, the President of Ukraine marched onto Celtic Manor Golf Course, the place where Europe raised the Ryder Cup, now host to a summit for the most powerful military club in the world. President Poroshenko made this dramatic announcement.
I give an order to chief of my military to declare a ceasefire in a half an hour time at 6 o'clock Ukrainian time.
Just a few hours earlier, the red arrows had roared overhead. Just one part of a fearsome display of air power from 9 different countries, laid on for NATO's watching leaders, or perhaps in truth, for their watching enemies. For this was the day NATO decided to deploy more of its forces on its eastern border, the border with Russia. This is what the ceasefire is meant to stop. 2,000 miles away from the summit, Russian-backed rebels battling with Ukrainian forces in the port of Mariupol. Back in Wales, the reaction to the news was, we'll believe it when we see it.
Obviously, we are hopeful, but based on past experience, also skeptical that, in fact, the separatists will follow through and the Russians will stop violating Ukraine's sovereignty.
This summit agreed to establish a 4,000-strong rapid response force based in Poland. David Cameron said that 1,000 of its troops would come from Britain, and a further 3,500 will take part in a series of military exercises designed to reassure countries in Eastern Europe. They fear Vladimir Putin. He may have unveiled a Ukrainian peace plan earlier this week, but NATO's working on the assumption that his intentions are anything but peaceful.
We stand firmly behind Ukraine's right to make its own decisions, not to have them dictated by Russian tanks rolling over the border.
New sanctions would still come into force, he said, until a Ukrainian peace plan was implemented. I put it to the Prime Minister how some would see this ceasefire.
Putin has won because the Ukrainians realise that the West have done too little too late, and Putin will get away with his aggression.
I would challenge the view that the EU, the West, America have somehow been weak in response to what has happened. I think it's very important to focus on the pressure that we can realistically and effectively bring to bear, and that is economic sanctions pressure.
What though of that other great challenge, the search for an American-led strategy to confront the forces of the so-called Islamic State, or what the US calls ISIL? President Obama's plan is becoming clearer. It will be unveiled when he takes the chair of the UN General Assembly next month, and already has the backing of what's being called a core coalition of 10 NATO nations.
There's great conviction that we have to act as part of the international community to degrade and ultimately destroy ISIL, and that was extremely encouraging.
And support may come from a more surprising source. The BBC has been told that Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah al-Khamenei has approved contact between Iran and the US about how to combat Islamic State. The test of whether this summit has confronted the threats from the south as well as the threats from the east will come long after this military hardware is removed from this golf course, and it will come thousands of miles away.